The Nine of Wands in Joe Bandel's Oak Tarot of love and romance fundamentally redefines the traditional imagery of the wounded warrior into a scene of profound emotional restoration and renewed self-worth. In most classic decks, this card depicts a figure leaning on a staff, bandaged and weary from battle, essentially bracing for the next blow. But in Bandel's vision, the struggle isn't with an external enemy, it's with the internal weight of unworthiness and the courage it takes to let healing in.
It's a radical departure. In the Rider-Waite-Smith tradition, the Nine of Wands is the wounded warrior archetype. It's about resilience, yes, but it's a defensive kind of resilience. You're standing your ground, but you're exhausted. Bandel takes that same structural number, 9, and transforms the 9 wands into a protective circle of light rather than a defensive barrier. Instead of keeping the world out, these wands create a sanctuary for a very specific, intimate moment of truth between two people.
That sanctuary aspect is clear in the imagery. You have these 9 glowing wands surrounding a man and a woman, and the action isn't a combat stance. It's a man gently telling a woman she is beautiful. It feels almost quiet, yet the card describes it as a moment of healing warmth. Why is such a simple compliment framed as this massive, protective spiritual event?
Because in the context of the Oak Matrix, the philosophical system Bandel built this deck around, wands represent spiritual love. This isn't just a casual remark about appearance, it's an act of spiritual recognition. When he tells her she is beautiful, he's challenging the guilt and unworthiness she's been carrying. The card shows her face softening from doubt to radiant joy. That transition is the final battle of the 9 of Wands in this deck. It's the battle to believe you are lovable after being battered by past experiences or self-criticism.
The shift in color palettes supports that too. We aren't seeing the harsh reds or blacks of a battlefield. Bandel uses warm golds, soft pinks, and healing greens. It's an interesting choice because green and pink are traditionally associated with the heart chakra, but since this is the suit of wands, we're seeing that heart energy filtered through the lens of spiritual fire and inspiration.
Those greens specifically tie back to the recurring symbol of the oak tree, which in this card is shown blooming nearby. In Bandel's system, the oak is the anchor of grounded reality. While the wands provide the spark or the light of the realization, the oak represents the stability that allows that healing to take root. Without that grounded presence, a compliment can feel fleeting or even suspicious. But here, the blooming oak suggests that this truth, this new sense of self-worth, is something that can grow into a permanent part of the relationship's landscape.
I want to push back on the specific gendered roles Bandel outlines for this card. He describes a male experience of offering support and a female experience of being seen and valued. In a modern context, that feels a bit restrictive. Can we look at these as energetic roles rather than strict biological ones? Is it possible for these roles to be fluid?
Bandel's work is deeply influenced by his translations of early 20th century German literature and esoteric traditions, which often use masculine and feminine as archetypal polarities. If we look at it through that lens, the male experience here is the projector or the initiator of the truth. It's the act of holding space and projecting affirmation. The female experience is the receptor, the one doing the difficult work of lowering their guard and allowing that affirmation to change their internal state. Anyone, regardless of gender, can find themselves in either role. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do in a relationship isn't the defending we see in traditional tarot, but the receiving of love when you feel you don't deserve it.
That idea of receiving being the challenge really changes the stakes of the card. The text mentions that this is the moment where guilt and unworthiness begin to heal. It suggests that before this card, there's been a period of significant emotional armor. If the 9 of Wands is the last bass before the completion of the cycle at 10, then this healing is the final hurdle to clear before reaching true spiritual integration.
Exactly. If you think about the sequence, the 7 of Wands in this deck is often about a crushing heartbreak or a loss of innocence. The 8 is that high-speed astral communication where minds start to reconnect. By the time we hit the 9, we're back in the light of day, dealing with the actual physical person. The wounds of the previous cards are represented by that doubt on the woman's face. The man's courage, and it does take courage, is to speak the truth into that doubt without being deterred by her potential rejection of the compliment.
It's a different kind of strength than we usually see. It's the strength to be vulnerable and the strength to be kind. But what about the shadow side? Even in this healing scene, Bandel often hints at tensions. Is there a danger in this protective circle of wands becoming a bubble that ignores reality?
The shadow of the 9 of Wands is always hypervigilance. In a romantic sense, that can manifest as one partner becoming the sole source of the other's self-worth. If the woman only feels beautiful because he says so, that's not renewed self-worth, that's dependency. That's why the oak tree is so vital. The healing light flows between them, but the tree stands independently. The goal of this card isn't to create a closed loop where they only see each other. It's to use the relationship as a catalyst so that she can eventually radiate joy on her own.
There's a phrase in the description, he gives her the key. It implies a power dynamic that might make some people uncomfortable. It sounds like he holds the power to define her. How do we reconcile that with the idea of renewed self-worth being an internal process?
It's a key to a door she already has. In many of Bandel's writings, he talks about initiating each other lovingly. We often can't see our own beauty because our mirrors are cracked by past trauma. A partner who truly sees you acts as a clean mirror. They aren't giving you beauty, they are revealing the beauty that was already there but was obscured by that unworthiness the card mentions. The key is the truth that unlocks her own ability to see herself. He isn't the source of the light, he's the one focusing the lens.
Let's look at the technical breakdown of those 9 wands. They form a circle. In many esoteric traditions, a circle is a symbol of protection, but also of a contained process. It reminds me of a laboratory or an alchemical vessel. Within this circle, the lead of unworthiness is being transmuted into the gold of self-worth. Does the number 9 itself play a role here?
In numerology, 9 is the number of attainment and nearing the end of a cycle. It's often a solitary number, think of the hermit. But here, Bandel has doubled it. It's as if 2 hermits have come out of their individual caves to share their findings. The attainment in this card is the realization that you don't have to be perfect to be worthy. It's the recovery from the war of the previous cards. If the 10 of Wands is the total union, the 9 is the final clearing of the emotional baggage that would prevent that union from being healthy.
So if someone pulls this card in a reading and they're feeling that male experience, the advice is essentially stop being defensive and start being supportive. And if they're in the female experience, it's stop doubting and start accepting. It sounds simple, but in the heat of a relationship, that transition from doubt to radiant joy can be terrifying.
It is terrifying because it requires you to drop the bandage from the traditional 9 of Wands. That bandage, the fixed worldview of being a victim or being unlovable, is a form of protection. If I believe I'm unlovable, I don't have to worry about being disappointed. Dropping that doubt means I'm now open to being hurt again. That's the grit and resilience this card is actually testing. Do you have the strength to be happy? Do you have the stamina to stay in the healing warmth without running back to the shadows?
It's a test of stamina for joy. I like that. It reframes the weariness of the 9 of Wands, not as physical exhaustion, but as the emotional fatigue of keeping up a defensive wall. When the wall finally comes down and the healing light flows between them, there's a massive release of energy. You can see it in the softening of her face. That's a physiological shift as much as a spiritual one.
And that release is what allows the oak to bloom. In nature, oaks don't bloom with flashy flowers. Their blooming is more about the production of acorns and the strengthening of the canopy. In this card, the blooming signifies that the relationship is moving from a survival phase to a generative phase. They are no longer just weathering the storm together. They are creating an environment where both can flourish. It's the difference between a relationship that is a bunker and a relationship that is a garden.
The card also mentions that this moment brings hope, not a naive hope, but a renewed hope. It implies that hope was lost at some point. Looking at the deck as a whole, Joe Bandel seems to be making a point that love isn't a straight line of happiness. It's a soulmate cycle that includes these deep valleys of doubt and these high peaks of revelation.
He's very honest about that. His background in translating dark literature means he doesn't shy away from the bruised crimsons and heavy blues of the human experience. But the Nine of Wands is the pivot. It's the gift of truth that overrides the story of pain. When you see this card, it's an invitation to recognize that the battle you think you're fighting is over, and the person standing in front of you isn't the enemy. They're the one holding the light that shows you who you really are.
It's a powerful reminder that sometimes the most spiritual thing you can do is tell someone they're beautiful and actually mean it. It's not just a compliment, it's an intervention. It's a way of using the fire of the wands to burn away the guilt that keeps people stagnant. And that, ultimately, is what creates the renewed self-worth that allows the next stage of the cycle to begin.
It's the ultimate aha moment of the suit. You've gone through the sparks of the ace, the planning of the 3, the crisis of the 5, and the heartbreak of the 7. Now at the 9, you realize that the spiritual goal of love wasn't just being together, it was being transformed. The man and woman in the circle aren't the same people they were at the start of the deck. They are more grounded, more honest, and finally, they are ready to be seen.
This card teaches us that the final stand isn't against an outsider, but against the inner voice that says we aren't enough, proving that the most resilient act in love is the courage to believe in our own worthiness. If this exploration of the Nine of Wands and the healing power of truth resonated with you, pass this episode along to someone who might need to hear that they are beautiful and worthy today.